the version of history we were taught was basically that civilization spread from the south to the north, that it all started somewhere around the region that is now Iraq. And then it went via the Egyptians and the Greeks and the Romans and further north until all of Europe was civilized. So the early inhabitants of Northern Europe tended to be written off as primitive barbarians. And I remember virtually the only thing I remember being taught about the ancient Britons was that they used to dye their skins blue with a substance called woad. So I used to imagine these mysterious blue-skinned figures moving through the misty forests of ancient Britain and occasionally grunting to each other in some primitive language. Well, we now know that that picture is completely false, that there was, in fact, a highly advanced civilization in the north long before the Romans came, long before the pyramids were even built. The idea of Hyperborea or Tula or Thula, as it's sometimes called, goes back to ancient Greece, to about the 4th century BC, when a Greek mariner called Pythias sailed from the port of Massalia, which is present-day Marseille, in a ship that probably looked something like this. And he sailed out through the Pillars of Hercules, the Straits of Gibraltar, and out into the Atlantic and up into the far north. And he came to a land which he described as a land of fog and ice, which may have been Iceland. We don't know exactly where it was. It could possibly have been Iceland. But he called this land Tula, or Thula, or Ultima Thula, as the Romans called it. And this merged with the legend of Hyperborea. The name Hyperborea, it means literally beyond the north wind, Boreas being the god of the north wind. And later on, just a few years ago, there was another expedition which went there, and they found all sorts of very interesting things, like pyramids, like this one here.
I'm glad you're sharing these slides, because reading your book, it's very interesting to hear that they're actually finding some stuff like that in
pyramids even.
Yeah. So things like this and labyrinths. Now,
Wow.
labyrinths are very interesting because you find labyrinths like this all over the Northern Hemisphere, and in fact, right down into the territories of the Native Americans. All the indigenous peoples around the Arctic Circle, from the Inuit in Greenland around to Alaska, and the various Mongol people of Siberia, the Yakut and the Buryat and so on, and the Sami people of northern Scandinavia, they all have shamanic cultures.
Yeah.
And as you say, Barchenko investigated the Sami, and there was one particular island in the Kol Peninsula where they had a burial ground which was sacred. It was covered with reindeer skulls. The reindeer being a sacred animal in that part of the world. And he came to the conclusion that the Sami were practicing a very ancient sun cult, and that, in fact, they were the original Hyperboreans. Well, now this is very fascinating. These are some petroglyphs, as they call stone spheres. They're about the size of a tennis ball. And they are about 2,000 years old. And the interesting thing about them is that these markings, these sort of protuberances on them, correspond to the Platonic solids, the 5 Platonic solids, which you see below on the right, where the Stonehenge is on the left.
Yeah. Stonehenge
is a solar monument, whereas Callanish stones is lunar. It was all like, it's like a kind of observatory geared to the cycles of the moon. There are many Russians who would like to see the Russians as the descendants of the Hyperboreans. One artist, Alexander Uglanov, so this is one of his images of the way he imagined Hyperborea. So as you can see, he imagined it as a very technically very advanced culture with spaceships and other forms of aircraft and these fantastic buildings. The Nordic mythology says that the runes were revealed to Odin, the god Odin, as he hung on the world tree, the Yggdrasil, for 9 days and nights. So it was a kind of shamanic ordeal. One is the level of actual historical fact, and the other is the level of myth and legend. And I think there is a sort of a, you could call it an archetype. It's a motif that you find again and again throughout history, namely the motif of the faraway Never land, the faraway promised land, which is almost unreachable, but not quite. It's reachable by those who are have reached the necessary stage of development to go there.